Wilson, headline books. Zoom, zoom into books. We are here at the American Library Association 2025 edition, City of Brotherly Love, Philadelphia, PA. And our guest right now on Zoom into Books is Brian McLean. Brian, how you doing?
Hi, Rick. It's great to be here.
It may be my favorite guest so far because
Oh,
his first comment to me was, we should be doing this at an Irish pub.
that's right.
Now, not that McLean might have some Irish lineage,
Oh, it
but
definitely does.
I think we could probably find a place here in the City of Brotherly Love where we could tip
Make
back
that
a
work.
pint or two with some of the locals, you know.
Oh, that'd be fine.
All right, so you got this book out. Hold it up
Yeah,
there
sure.
for me.
Here we
Our
go.
Global Crisis.
Crisis.
Now, the title would seem to indicate
This looks dark.
a nonfiction, but
No,
this is actually
no, it
a
is
novel.
no, it is actually a nonfiction.
Okay, nonfiction.
So no, this is why we're here today.
That's right. Okay,
Figure out what this is all about.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me what this book is about then.
Okay, sure. It is a dark-looking book, and what it actually is, it's a call to action book. Really, it's a look at what humanity is doing to civilization, and what we can do about it, and everything that includes our society, our environment, things like that. It sounds like, oh, this is one of many books that have gone into this, but I actually was looking at this a little differently when I started on it. It actually goes back. I look at our human evolution. So I'm like, why is society doing this? Why are we continually doing the things that we do day in, day out, civilization to civilization? They come in, they rise, they fall. They come in, they rise and fall. And realize that there is a pattern to this, a pattern that we are currently repeating in this current environment. And it actually, a lot of it stems from our evolution. That sounds odd, but if you think about how long we've been around, and we've come from early hominid species, and we've lived in an outdoor, unstructured environment based on survival. And over the last, and it seems like a long time, couple of thousand years, we've gone from living in that environment to living in a structured, civilized, as we call it, environment. And we actually haven't evolved to deal with that properly. So an example of this, we actually look at ourselves still. What concerns me the most? Well, it's usually our family, our spouse, our children. I'm really concerned making sure I'm making enough money, making sure that they're taken care of. That's the core of our existence. And we look at ourselves first. So I call that, in the book, I do call it our sphere of concern. But we have a great, and we never had much of a sphere of influence. We lived in this, and that was it. We didn't care too much about what was around us, other than finding food, staying warm, staying sheltered.
Okay, so you gotta help me here.
You bet.
What's your background that wanted to get you into this book?
No, okay. Actually, this is interesting. I'm from a science technical background. So I'm not actually from this background, other than I've spent, this book has actually taken me 30 years to pull together. I started it in the 90s, and before it was actually really a book, it was just a thought process for about a decade, and writing notes to myself, because I find humanity interesting. Actually, my background then is, I ended up originally I was going to go into medicine, but I decided I didn't really want to do that. So I ended up going into lab medicine, which is laboratory medicine, because I like science, I like chemistry, I like that. So I ended up in hospital labs, but later I got into information systems, information technology, especially around healthcare, dealing with hospital information systems, patient data, all that kind of thing. So this was, in a sense, more of a hobby, but it became a passion for 10 years. And once I had enough data, I'm like, I really need to tell somebody about this. So I started converting that into, while I continued researching, I started converting that, what was really going to be just a short, maybe a web page or a little post on the web, that evolved into, it's now about a 600-page book. 20% of it are all my references. I have over 100 pages of references alone, going back to the 1500s, because I start with things like that.
Great debate going on worldwide.
Sure.
Over all of this.
Yes.
Is there global warming? Is there not global warming? Can we actually do something to stop it? You know, and you look at all
correct.
How does
That's
this play in, you know,
the,
on one side or the other? I don't
you,
know. I don't care
oh
which way
no,
you're on, but
absolutely.
about one side or the other. Which,
No, it's an interesting.
why would both sides want to read this book?
Both sides would want to read this book. Well, interesting. I still lay it in the laps, our laps, and I sit on the fence and play both sides. I actually agree that we are generating the global warming, but actually that global warming isn't even my concern about. In fact, that won't be the point of failure. We actually spend. I'm an environmentalist as well, and actually our concern for the environment in terms of climate change is overdone. That won't be the point of failure for society. In fact, probably not excluding being hit by an asteroid impact or the other, or the even more likely one, a coronal mass ejection is what they're called, a plasma ejection from the sun, which is actually very possible. More likely than not, our biggest issue will be our resources. I actually go into a lot in the book about how in primitive society, we just used what we needed, but there weren't very many of it. So we remained in balance with the ecosystem. When we came across a herd, we killed as many as we could because that might have to last us for the next half a year. So resource consumption wasn't a concern. Today, with all the people and the efficiency of our modern society, we're going through resources faster than we're going to be able to recycle them or even share them. We're seeing this actually currently with, you hear all about the critical resources. That is one of the stumbling points. I finished this book actually about 5 years ago.
Resource being oil.
Well, no, actually, there's some more. We'll have enough oil to go a little longer, but that'll be one we want to phase out. We're moving to modern things like electric vehicles, EVs, and that. There's a group of metals and elements, about 17 of them, that are considered critical resources. Some of them are called rare earth elements. They aren't necessarily rare, but they aren't in mineable quantities. China holds about 70 to 90% of the world's supply of these resources just by the luck of geography. There are other good deposits out there, but because China can mine them so efficiently and cheaply, they basically put everyone out of business. But anyway, that will be a stumbling block. Our new technologies that we're developing rely on those critically and won't work without them. So if we reach a point where those become depleted too much or too hard to get, we then bring in the geopolitical conflicts because I want that, you want that. This again leads to regional wars, and if those get out of hand, we have bigger wars. And that's what we've always done. It's usually a fight for...
Isn't that where we're at right now in this great
as funny things as... And it's not funny. As we sit here today, that's, again, we're reaching by, and then say, oh, that won't happen. But look, we have the history. It has happened. It's happened for the Romans. It localized for them, but they had problems like that. They ran out of actually gold. They didn't have enough money to really pay for their soldiers. They ran out of a critical resource, which then caused them to start to break down. Then government, but then more modern World War I and II.
You think about critical resource, which is the critical resource? Is it oil or is it a warm water port?
Well, see, and that's the thing. There are many things that are critical, and in society, another aspect of the book, I talk about societal convergences. So a weakness in our society is that we go towards things that work really well and are efficient. So technology, our electronics technology, cell phones, everything, that's great, works for everybody. But if the sun has another, what's called a coronal mass ejection, a big one, as there was, the last really big one was in 1859. And if we had that today, so what happens is sun flares out and it blasts off a big shot of plasma, about 1 billion tons of plasma. And if it's directed at Earth, it's like a shotgun blast. When that rips through the atmosphere, it generates a magnetic field, which generates an electric current in the Earth. And actually, in a blink of an eye, it will fry everything that we use. That sounds like science fiction, but in 1859, we had the Carrington event, as it's called, and it ripped through. You could see the northern lights in the Caribbean because it was so intense, and the telegraph lines actually sparked and fried. And when they shut the power down to them, they continued to work for, I think it was an hour or more, because the electric field that was generated in the atmosphere was enough to drive the current in the lines all on its own. That was not very high tech.
I hadn't thought about that one yet.
So if we get nailed by that, they figure it could be anywhere between 6 months and, depending on the severity, a decade before global electric infrastructure would be fully back online.
Your book won an award at the Guinea Book Award. That's
It
pretty
did.
cool.
It did. I am actually, and overall this year, I'm up about 7 awards.
Congratulations.
It
That's
has
great.
been a popular. It's a thick book, but it's a good book, and it gets really deep. Like the 30 years or so
And
research.
if people want the book, Brian, where can they go besides an Irish pub?
Besides
they
an-
might find out that later.
That's right. They can the common ones, like depending on where you are, Amazon, of course. But I know Headline Books has it through. I can never pronounce it right. Izu. So you can get it through there. But Amazon, Barnes and Noble, a few other places like that. They just go online. If you start there, at least you can look up information on it. It's just Our Global Crisis by Brian D. McLean.
Brian McLean, thank you for being with us today on Zoom in the Books.
Glad to
are
be.
zooming through the American Library Association 2025 edition of their annual conference, and it has been a pleasure to be with you here in the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, PA.
Pleasure.
Brian, take care, my friend.
Pleasure talking to you. Thanks, Rick.
We will see you at the pub later.
Excellent. Can't wait.